So there are various objects inside Kubernetes, okay, starting from the compute to storage to network and to the storage. There are various objects, so we have different names to each and every object, and there is a specific use for each and every object. So let's see how many objects are there, what is the use case for each object, and what components or what objects to be learned first. Okay, so in Kubernetes, the smallest unit that we can control is known as a pod. Okay, so we had seen the architecture. So we have the master nodes and we have the slave nodes, right? So let's say that I'm creating a 3 node cluster. In that, one is the master, okay, and the rest are slaves or the workers. So this is worker 1 and worker 2. Okay, and then coming to the components or the objects, the smallest object that I can control inside a Kubernetes platform is a pod. So what is the smallest unit that I can control in in Docker world? It is, guess what is the smallest unit that I can control?
Pod.
Containers.
Yes, so I have containers. Okay, so I have the container C1, and if I say one more container C2, in order to establish the communication. So how we are doing it? Let's say container C1 is named web, the container C2 is named DB. Okay, so when I'm running Docker run, so I would give hyphen hyphen name, right, to give the name to that particular container which I'm running. So there are two ways I can communicate to C2 from C1. So one is through C2's IP address, correct? Correct or
Yes.
wrong?
Yes. Yes.
But the IP address keep changing, right? So if the C2 is killed by the operating system due to some issue, and if it is restarted, so obviously its IP address is going to change. So IP addresses are not the reliable way of communication. So that's why we have communication using the container names. So we call it as DNS resolution. So C1 can talk to C2 using DB as the name. And if we are under default bridge network, right? So this communication won't happen through names. So DNS resolution won't work. That's why what we said, we have to create a custom bridge, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
And then we have to attach these two containers in that custom bridge so that they can talk over the container names. So that is how we created the networking. If you see the Docker Compose file for setting up the multiple containers at the same time, so when you run Docker Compose up, so the first thing it is going to do is it is going to create a network of default of bridge type, and then it will put all these containers which you have mentioned in the Docker Compose in that, just because for the DNS resolution. And the container is the smallest unit that I can control in the container world. And similarly from the VM world, so virtual machine is the smallest unit, right? The we can control till the VM level. And coming to the Kubernetes world, pod is the smallest unit that I can control. Okay, so what is a pod? Okay, so we'll come back to what is a pod in depth in the coming sessions. So pod is nothing but it hosts containers inside it. Okay, so if I say this as a pod, it has containers in it. So the ideal use case is having only one container in a pod. Okay, but there are some use cases where I can have multiple containers. Okay, so these are not application containers. So one is your main application container, and the other one can be your helper container that will help or extend the functionality of your main application container. Okay, so I cannot put two application containers in a single pod. So I mean, if you want, you can put, but that is not the ideal way of doing. So we only put the helper containers. So now in Kubernetes, you cannot control container. That means you can get into a container, but you cannot create a container. Okay, only you can create pod. Inside pod, your container resides. Understood? So pod is the basic scheduling unit. inside Kubernetes. So now coming to, we'll go from backwards. Okay, so we have the containers, and containers are encapsulated inside a pod. So now I can deploy a pod, right? So by default, I've created an nginx pod, and that nginx pod is landed in some other node, some node. Okay, so it is running here in worker node 1. By default, master node will not run any workloads because it is tainted. Tainted means it has some labels, okay, due to which you cannot schedule any workloads. So it is also for the fact that master should only run the orchestration components like the scheduling, the scheduler, controller, API server, etcd. So we don't want master to run any other workloads. If you want, you can also run some workloads in master, but that is not recommended. Understood, guys? Guys,
Yes.
are
Yeah.
you able to understand? So we have containers and we have pods that are encapsulating the container. So I have only one pod. Okay, I've just deployed it. So if I have one more pod of let's say Ubuntu, okay, so I'll go ahead and deploy it using kubectl, but it is up to the scheduler to schedule it onto a workload, onto a worker node. So I cannot control it in case of automatic scheduling. Okay, so now kubelet sorry, the kubectl or the kubectl send the request to the API server. Now API server updated in the etcd, and then scheduler found that one of the container, one of the pod has to be scheduled. Now it has scheduled onto worker 02. Okay, so this is about pod level. So now coming to the replicas. Okay, one container or the one pod is not sufficient, right? So I'll need multiple instances of the same pod to share the workload. So that is where my other objects comes in. So these objects are known as deployments or replica sets or replication controllers. Okay, so these all work on the same level. Okay, so there is only minute difference which we are going to see. So what the deployments or the replica set or the replication controller do is they maintain some replicas. Okay, so let's say I need nginx of 3 replicas. Okay, so what these will do is these are all controllers. Okay, that means that they keep monitoring the cluster. All these comes under the controller section of your API server. So we have various components like scheduler, controller. So all the controller will have all these inbuilt controllers: deployment controller, replication set controller, replication controller, all these things. Okay, now I need 3 replicas. So it is up to the scheduler to schedule them. Okay, anywhere, like in worker node 1 it has scheduled 2, and in worker node 2 it has scheduled one more. So there are 3 replicas total running. Okay, due to some issue this node went down, imagine. Then what replication controller will do, or the replica set, replication controller is an old one, replica set is a new one. Okay, so what this controller will do is, so it will check that, it will see that only 2 of them are running but the desired state is 3. So it will try to spin up one more instance. So since worker node 01 is the only available worker node, it will spin up here. Understood what is the use of these components? So they maintain certain replicas. So even deployment also done do the same. Okay, understood, guys?
Yes.
So now we have all your application containers running. So we have the front end or the application, and we also have the database running somewhere. Okay, and I also have one WordPress container pod deployed. Okay, and this WordPress has to access the DB. So in the Docker world, what we are doing, we are not creating any extra object, right? So only we are putting them under a bridge network, so they are able to communicate over their names. But in case of Kubernetes, we can't do that. Okay, we can't directly communicate from pod to pod. Okay, so we need a component known as a service. Okay, this service is different from what the service that we had seen in the Docker swarms. In Docker swarm, the service indicates a container. Okay, So we use Docker run command in case of a single node. Okay. And then in case of a multi-node cluster, we do Docker service create, right? Guys.
Yes, Vikram.
So their service is different, but here service is different. So don't get confused. Okay. So why we need a service here? Okay. So let's go back to, so I have a WordPress container. So imagine this is running inside a Kubernetes platform. Okay, so this is running in Worker Node 2, and I have a DB container which is running on Worker Node 1. Okay, and then so this WordPress has to talk to this DB. Okay, so again, how many ways are there? One is using IP address and the other one is using the
Name.
name. So the DB name or the IP address of the DB. Okay, so what is the range of this IP address? We are going to see it later. Okay, so what happens is this DB and WordPress, we will not run as pods. Okay, we'll run as pods, but we'll control them using deployment controller. That means if I directly run as a pod object, if this WordPress is killed, it won't come up. But if I put it under a controller, deployment controller, replica set controller, even the only instance, so I have only one instance of WordPress and one instance of DB, right? But if I manage them using deployment controller, so even if this replica goes down, automatically it comes up. Even in case of DB, if it is down, it again, it will, the new pod will be created again, or the existing pod will be restarted. Okay, so that means I have the high availability. That means that no container will be down. I mean, if I'm saying about container, just take it as a pod. So no pod will be down. So they'll be up all the time. Okay, let's say this DB container restarted twice. So this IP address remains same? No, right? It will be changed. Correct?
Yes.
So that means that I should not rely on my IP address. So I have service. So this service is a running component inside Kubernetes? No, it is just an object which is not in the live state. It is just an object. Okay. So what this service will do is this service will get attached to this container or the pod, DB pod. So we name, you name the service any name. So you just put DB underscore SVC. Okay, or DB itself. Okay. So now when WordPress want to talk to this DB, it should talk to this service. Now this service, it knows where to forward, so it will forward to DB. So what happens in this case is, if DB container restarted and new container, DB pod restarted and new pod took its place. So this is again DB. So this is no more. Still, this service knows where exactly this DB pod inside the cluster. Let's say initially this DB is running in worker node 1. Now after restarting, okay, it is now running in worker node 2. But still this service knows how to forward the traffic to that particular DB pod in a particular node. We don't have to care about the location of the pod inside the cluster. So we have to talk to the service and service will talk to the pod. Okay. So what is the other use case is, let's say I have two replicas of DB pod. Okay, how many replicas? Two replicas of a DB pod. Okay, so now what is the use case is, this service know that there are two replicas of the DB pod. There is no, there is, okay, so let's say there are four replicas. Okay, I've created the deployment, right, for the DB. So I have created replicas as four. So now we don't have to talk to the DB, right? There is no such concept. We have to talk to the service. Now service, what it will do here is, it will forward the request to each each of these pods in a round robin fashion. That means that first time it will forward to this instance, second time this pod, the third time this, third time, fourth time this. So this will ensure load balancing for me. Understood, guys?
Yes, Vikram.
So let's say that there is Nginx. Okay, there is one more pod, Nginx. This wants to talk to WordPress. So now immediately what I'll do, I'll create a service for WordPress. I'll give it a name, and then I'll using some labels, I'll tag both of them. So now if Nginx wants to talk to, it will talk to this service here, and the service will talk to this pod. Okay, so now there are two types of services. One are the internal services where this communication happens internal to the cluster, but there is an external service where when I want to access this WordPress site from the outside, right, from the browser level, so now I have to create a service for that also. So this is known as node port service. We'll come back to it. And the internal services are called cluster IP services. Okay, so this is about the services. So we have the services concept. So now we have all the applications running inside our cluster, and then in order to talk among the clusters, so I have created an object known as service svc1 svc2. Okay, so these services are not bound to a particular node. This is, as I said, this is not a running component, this is just an object. Okay, it won't reside anywhere. It's a virtual component. Only the running components inside your Kubernetes cluster are only the pods, rest are all the configurations and the objects. Okay, so now we have this service. Okay, so I said that service for internal communication, service for the external communication. Okay, I have set up my complete application. So now there comes the other part, volumes. Because I might deploy stateful applications, I might deploy stateless applications. So if I'm going for stateful applications, it needs an volume like Docker volumes. We use bind volumes and named volumes. Similarly in Kubernetes also there should be a volume, right? So now if I the DB, if I need, I can attach some volume to this DB, right? Some volume. For WordPress also some volume. Okay, so this volume can be bound to a particular node, or it is a cluster level volume, or else what I do, I can mount an NFS, right? So there is an NFS, and then there are mounts. I can mount the same mounts, and I can use them. Okay, so there are volumes. Inside the volumes, we have many types of volume. We have something known as host path, MTDIR. Okay, and then PV, PVCs. We'll come back to all this. Okay, now my storage issue also is resolved. Okay, so what about configurations? Okay, correct. I cannot hard code, right? I cannot hard code what is the name of the DB service. Okay, what is the DB name, what is the DB port number? I cannot hard code, right? So I should have a configuration. Even if we see, we gave configuration like volume mounts and all, right, in case of Docker. So similarly, we can give configurations to the pods using config map or secrets. Okay, why configurations are to be needed from outside is, this is an pod, that means it is running a container image. So I cannot go ahead and put everything in the container image, right, due to some security constraints. Only my source code will be there, and the configurations like what is a DB endpoint. Okay, so what is a DB user name, what is a DB password, I should supply them as configurations and see. So config maps are a normal way of sharing the content. Secrets are way of sharing the content using encoding. So they are encoded, the data is encoded, and they are given it to each and every pod. Understood, guys? So now this DB, they have configurations using config maps or secrets, anything. Okay, so even this Ubuntu needs these config maps and secrets, I can use it, I can give it to that Ubuntu. So now my configuration issue also is resolved. Okay, so now what are the other things? Okay, so far we had seen automatic way of scheduling, right? So we let the scheduler schedule the workloads for us. Okay, so let's say we have the database containers. Okay, so these database containers, what we are saying is, so these are these need a volume backup. Okay, that means that they will write to a volume, okay, or read from a volume. Understood, guys, or it is confusing?
Vikram,
Yeah.
I have a question on services actually.
Mm.
Let's say, for example, I have only single pod. So even for that single pod, we require a service.
Yes, we need a service.
So in that case, if let's say, for example, I have multiple instances of WordPress running, and this
Mm.
WordPress is communicating with DB. So in that case, the communication should be like WordPress will communicate with the service associated with WordPress, and in turn
No,
the service.
no.
Okay.
No. Here, see, when I am talking, okay, here I don't have to. I can directly talk to the other person. Okay, but here it needs a proxy kind of a thing. Okay, but
Mm-hmm.
when I'm listening, I need a proxy. For listening only, I need a service.
Okay.
For talking, I don't need a service. Okay, so when I'm saying that a service should be mapped to a group of pods. Okay,
Okay.
so why service is needed is because if I don't have this, okay, let me um, draw a small picture. So I have a WordPress and I have a database. Okay, so inside my WordPress logic, I'm just saying to connect to the word DB. I'm just saying it to connect it like this. Some URL. Okay, MySQL colon. There is a DB endpoint, right? So I'm using this URL DB colon 3302. I'm saying, okay.
Okay.
So this endpoint is stable endpoint. Okay, so if I'm this is WordPress container in this case. Now in this case, this is a DB container. If I have to deploy them in the Docker, it is fine. Okay, I create a custom bridge network and they add both the containers. So now this DB colon 3302 will work because I'm opening port mapping like this. Correct, and DB is the name and port mapping is this which I have given. So now if this DB container restarts or fails and recreates, it comes up with the same name, right, in the Docker also. Correct.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So now see here, in case of a Kubernetes, this is WordPress. Okay, this is DB, but this DB I won't run it as a single pod because Kubernetes is always meant for high availability, so that I'll run them using deployment. Inside the deployment, okay, so I give deployment this as the name, okay, web as the name, and replicas are, let's say, 3. Okay, so now how the naming convention will happen to each and every replica is the deployment name followed by some hash value. Okay, this is db1. So name pod name will be different. Okay, so these are all DB pods, but the name will be web hash. Now this is hash 0 and this is hash 02. Sorry, I mean to say this. Okay, so now here, see there are different hash values, right?
Mm, yeah.
Okay, so now if WordPress has to talk to DB using its this name, okay, it can communicate. That is fine. But what happens if there is an issue with this DB and it gets restarted? Once it restarted, this hash value is there right inside the name, it changes.
Okay.
Okay, so now talking with the IP address is not possible, talking with the name also is not possible because both are changing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, if it is a pod, if it is a single pod, I'm not deploying it with the WordPress, sorry, deployment. It is simple, a single pod. So the pod will have the same name if it is DB, if it is DB. Okay, but what happens is this is not the ideal way of creation, because if this pod is not managed by any controller like deployment or replica set, if this DB goes down, it won't come up. So I won't use a pod like this. Okay, I'll use it with a a controller. Understood now? So now the hash value changes, I'm saying. So, and let's say these hash values are not changing. Okay, let's say that's the use case. So now this WordPress has to talk to, there are 3 instances, right? Okay, so how will you configure this WordPress to talk to these instances? So every time you'll change this endpoint, like first time it will point to pod1 colon 3302, second time you'll change the URL to this one, third time you'll change it to this. No, right? If there is an
Yeah, I
endpoint, it
understand.
will be stable.
That's where
Okay,
the service will come into the picture,
yeah.
right?
So now if I put this
Right.
service, if it DB is the name which the URL is pointing to, I'll just name the service as DB. So now my logic won't break, because for this service I'll put input port as 02, output port is also 3302. That means that any traffic coming to 3302 port, it will be redirected to 330 port to the DBs, and the naming convention is also DB. So now my WordPress will always talk to DB colon 3302, and in behind the scenes it is forwarding to any of the instances. I doesn't care. Okay, I won't care to which instance it is forwarding to. I will not know how many instances are there, because it is up to the deployment controller to maintain the replicas. It is not my duty. And even if the DB1 goes down and comes back with a different hash value, it is still the DB that is managing it. Okay, I don't have to worry about it. Understood?
Okay. So irrespective of applications, like let's say I have 3 or 4 WordPress applications running. So even in that case, also there will be only one service
Yes.
that is there, and
Let's say
that
I have an
particular service.
Nginx. Nginx, it also wants to talk. I mean, it is not the use case ideally. If Nginx is there, it also has to talk to these DBs. Let's say it will only talk to this service. I will not create a new service again. And there is an Ubuntu or there is a Python application, okay, that wants to talk to DB. It will directly talk to this DB over the service name colon the service input port. In most cases, what we'll do is we'll put as 80 input port. In that case, what will happen? I don't have to mention the port, right? If it is 80, I'll simply use the service name. Understood, everyone?
Okay, got it.
Because ports are needed if it is not 80, right? If it is not 443 or 80, I have to input the port number also. Okay, that's why in most cases what we'll do, we'll use 80. Okay, so now coming to the earlier discussion, so we now have a way of giving the configurations. So the next thing we are talking about is manual scheduling. Okay, so now in this case here, in earlier scenarios, we let the scheduler schedule the workloads for us. Okay, now I need DB, I have DB, and that needs a volume backup, so for reading and writing. But this reading and writing has to be fast enough, so that's why what I did is I attached a solid state disk which is fast enough to the worker node 02. Okay, I mounted one SSD storage, and I want all the DB pods to be scheduled onto this worker node so that they can use this high speed storage. Understood the use case? In this case, I can have manual scheduling where I will decide where exactly this pod has to land onto which node. Okay. Although, I mean, if this particular node doesn't have any of the resources that your pod needs, automatically this pod scheduling fails, but still I can control it. If I have the enough resources in this node, and if these resources are sufficient to run the DB pod, so it will be scheduled. So this is known as manual scheduling, where I'll manually schedule the workloads. So there are multiple ways. There is a way known as node name. There are node selectors, node affinity, and anti affinity. Similarly, we have pod affinity and anti affinity. We have taints and tolerations. So there are multiple ways of achieving this. Understood? So now, okay, so now I can manually schedule it. So what's next? Okay, so here is the scenario. Okay, so I have only one cluster. Okay, so which is being shared by multiple applications or the users. Okay, so let's say this is a very big cluster and there are two teams for me. So one is the test team and the other one is the dev team. Okay, both of them are using the same cluster. So imagine a scenario. I have Nginx as the contain or the pod in both, I mean deployed by both test team and the dev team. Okay, both are using the same Nginx pod. Okay, so I have Nginx and Nginx both running inside the cluster. Okay, so now developer, okay, one user came who is from the development team. Then without knowing, without cross checking, he deleted the Nginx pod which is deployed by the testing or the test user, thinking that it is from the development team, right? Because it is with the almost with the same name. Okay, with a very minor change. So without cross checking or without knowing or accidentally, he deleted the container or the pod from the other team because they are having almost identical names. This can happen, right, in even in the real case scenarios. If we are sharing the cluster, so sometimes we'll go ahead and delete the resources of the other users. This is perfectly possible. This is possible, right, guys?
Yes, possible.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so now in order to avoid this, Kubernetes has a concept known as namespaces, and these namespaces are different from the namespaces and C groups. Okay, so what namespaces here is, so we are creating an isolate virtual spaces. Okay, it is not an environment, it doesn't have file system, not that concept. It is a virtual space inside the cluster. I can create namespaces like dev, test, prod. Okay, so by default this cluster has four namespaces like default, okay, node lease, okay, cube system, cube public. Okay, so what are these? Are these are isolated spaces where Kubernetes components run. Okay, I can have pods inside the default namespace, pods inside the cube system, inside cube public. Okay, so in order to talk to other pods in the other namespace, I have to go to that namespace and talk, or otherwise I have to explicitly mention to which resource I am talking to in which namespace. Okay, so let's say I have an Nginx pod running in both test, okay, and dev. So now my default access is the test namespace. Okay, now what I'll do is I can simply do kubectl delete, okay, and then pod name is Nginx. So if I do this, since I'm in test space namespace already, it gets deleted. But there is a similar pod running in the dev namespace. But if I have to delete that, I have to do kubectl delete pod nginx, and I have to explicitly mention the namespace using -n dev. Then only your nginx pod from the dev namespace gets deleted. Okay, so now user will know, right, which namespace he is trying to access. Now he cannot accidentally delete it because when he is giving this namespace, he will understand, right, he's trying to access the other namespaces. Okay, because if it is his namespace, he will not put this -n value itself. Okay, if he is putting -n some namespace, that means that he is intentionally deleting the resources from the other namespace. Okay, so the namespaces are the isolated environments. And also, when creating a new user to the cluster, we can restrict the namespaces also for him. That means that I can create a namespace and I can restrict his access to that namespace without giving him access to the other namespace. But when we are setting the kubeadm clusters or the minikube clusters, we have an admin user. Okay, so that kube config file that we have, it is for the admin user, so that admin user has access to the complete cluster. So even if you create hundreds of new namespaces, he will have access to. Okay, but in real case scenarios, we restrict access to certain namespaces. So a user from from one team will not have access to the other namespace, because it is the same cluster, right? We have to give them isolated or the virtual spaces. So now understood, guys, what are namespaces?
Yes.
Yeah, Vikram.
Okay, so these are the various components. So now let's, okay, we have everything now, right? We have pods running, services created, access created, configurations given, volumes are given. Okay, we are even controlling the manual scheduling. So what else is left inside Kubernetes? Hmm?
Uh, so Vikram, sorry to interrupt. So there are many technical terms which are we have discussed now. So are these written somewhere, or how to,
Yeah,
like, we have
we
to
are going
use
to see, come up with each and every topic. We'll see each and every topic in the sessions.
yeah, yeah. So that manual
It is,
schedule and all, the
yeah, yeah,
technical.
everything. So you don't have to worry about whatever terms I used. It is serving like an index for you. Okay, because next time when I say, when I take a name, you should not get surprised because Vikram didn't say this name before. Okay.
Yeah. Can you do one small favor for me? Like, can
Hmm?
you give a layman chart? Like, okay, so when you say WordPress, so this is where it rely. And when you
Sorry,
say, can
when I
you
say
can you yeah, yeah. Can you just present a layman chart, like something like when you say WordPress, this is relying at this place. When you say workers or pods, the pods
hmm,
and all, right?
hmm.
This is rely, and when you say SSDs, where does they rely?
No,
Just a,
SSDs are the storages. Okay, so they we connect them to the node, worker node. Okay, this is not a Kubernetes component. Okay, it's like that I bought a new laptop and I attached an external SSD to it so that I can store some files. Okay, like that. Now we'll come
okay,
back to all this. Okay, we'll come back to each and everything. So I'm just trying to, cover the complete, object, various objects inside the Kubernetes. Okay.
okay. I just want to relate the terms, like which is
Yeah.
talking to which and from which place.
Yeah, yeah. So once we start the pod section, right? So everything will be cleared. Okay. So now we have seen everything. So the last thing is, what about security, right? We haven't discussed about it. Okay. So without security, what happens is, okay, anyone can access any resource. Okay, that means that if I'm the admin user, I can access any resource. Any pod can access other pod. There are no restrictions. Okay. And being an admin user, okay, I have access to all namespaces. Okay, but I have to restrict, right? Okay, so these restrictions are from inside the cluster and from both outside the cluster. Inside the cluster, it is between objects, Kubernetes objects. External to the cluster, it is for the users. Okay, so inside the cluster and outside the, let's start with the outside the cluster. So we have various users that are talking to our Kubernetes cluster, right? The default user that gets created when you create a cluster using kubeadm or minikube, okay, he is an admin user. So he has access to all the resources, like he can create resources, he can update, delete, okay, create new users, okay, grant them permissions. Okay, so he has cluster level admin access. For Kubernetes, we should have at least one admin user. Okay, and this is the default one, but we will not share the kube config file of this user to anyone. Okay, you should have it with you as a admin. Okay, now let's say what will happen if a new user came and he needs access to the cluster. Let's say a developer came with my name and he needs access to the cluster. So what I'll do is I'll create the certificate and key for him. Okay, there is a process involved. Okay, and what I'll do is I will restrict him access also. Okay, let's say this Vikram over here, he is a tester. What I'll do is I'll create a CAN certificate so that this is for authentication. That means that he can authenticate to the cluster. Okay, but he cannot do anything as of now. Now what I'll do is I'll create RBACs for him, role based access control. These indicates authorization. So authorization in the sense, I'll say this particular test user Vikram can only list resources or get resources, and that too from a namespace known as test. Okay, understood? Now what happens is he cannot delete any resource from any namespace, not even including test, because he has given access to test namespace but only to fetch the resources. That means he can see number of pods running, number of services are there, the other stuff, but he cannot delete, he cannot modify, he cannot update, or he cannot create new resources. Nothing he can do. He can only list resources, see their logs for debugging. And then with all these, I have a kubeconfig file. What I'll tell him, I'll tell him to use this config file to talk to the cluster. Now there is a different user. Okay, so now there is a user, some XYZ user, he's a developer. Okay, and then for him what I'll do, I'll again generate CA certificate and key for him for the authentication, and for the authorization part I'll give him some more rights. Okay, so the rights are to list the resources and to create resources and delete and update, but I'll restrict him to a specific namespace like development namespace. Okay, so now the developer came. Okay, I've given him all these rights, but only to the development namespace. That means that he is acting like an admin for only this namespace. So now I'll have a different config file for him and I'll share that config file with him. Understood, guys? This is from outside the cluster. Understood?
Yes, Vikram. Yes, Vikram.
Okay, so now I can also have control inside the cluster. So inside the clusters we known as network policies. What are network policies is, so now there is a pod, there is one more pod 1 and pod. This pod 1 can freely talk to this pod 2. Okay, so this pod 1 is in worker 1, this pod 2 is in worker 2, they can freely talk to each other without any restriction. Even if this pod 2, okay, in another namespace. Okay, so this pod 1 is in dev namespace, this one is in prod namespace, but still they can talk. Okay, using proper service configurations, they can talk. There are no restrictions. But in real life scenario, we don't want to have this, right, this setup. Okay, so what is the real case scenario is we should have restrictions in place for both outgoing traffic and incoming traffic. Okay, so let's say there is a WordPress pod and there is a DB pod. Okay, so now this DB pod should accept traffic only from WordPress pod. Okay, so and inside Kubernetes there are certain terms. For the incoming traffic we call it as an ingress, for outgoing traffic we call it as egress. Okay, so now what I'm saying is for this DB I should not have any egress traffic. This DB won't talk to anything, right? In real life scenarios also it is true, right? DBs won't talk, we talk to DBs. So egress traffic, what I'm doing is I'm completely turning it off. Okay, and ingress traffic I'm restricting only from this WordPress pod. If there are other WordPress pods, so they will have different labels. This one will have labels are known as metadata, guys. Okay, so this is a information which doesn't have to do anything with your pod operations. So it is just a names. Okay, some nicknames or take it as a tags. Okay, we tag EC2 instances, right, with some data. Similarly, labels are also metadata to any object. You can create label to any object just for your identification. Okay, so now what this DB container will do is, if I set some networking policies for the ingress and that too from a certain labels, so this DB will only receive the incoming traffic from those labels. Okay, that too from this pod and from this labels. So no other pod can talk to this DB except for WordPress, and this DB will not have any outgoing traffic because I have completely locked it. So these are known as network policies. Okay, and also this WordPress can also have the networking policies, like from this IP address only it has to receive the traffic, or from the other resource only, from other pod only it can receive the traffic, and it cannot have any egress traffic. So all these restrictions related to the traffic both incoming and outgoing, okay, are known as networking policies. And some CNI plugins, because these are all networking, so we should have CNI plugin supporting it. Okay, we have CNI plugins like Flannel, Calico, ViewNet. Okay, so these are all if you remember, when we are setting up the KubeADM, we have used ViewNet as the CNI plugin, right? So this CNI plugin supports the network policies concept, but Flannel over here doesn't support it. Okay, even if you set networking policies, it won't implement it. Okay, it is always allow policy. Even if you set the networking policies in case of Flannel CNI, it won't entertain it. Okay, so now we also have the security mentioned. So now there are few other concepts. Okay, so the rest of the concepts are jobs, cron jobs, daemon sets, and then final one is static pods. So okay, so all these are sorry, static pods. So all these are pods. Okay, so there are naming conventions, all these are pods. Okay, what are jobs are? So let's say there is a job, okay, that I need to process these many files. So I create a pod for that job, and then I'll ask it to complete it and then go to inactive state. Okay, so once this job is completed, this pod will be either killed or it will be in completed state. I don't want to restart the pod because the jobs are done, so it has done its job. Okay, like the file processing or any job like the transporting a file from one place to other. Okay, it is a job. Now, what are cron jobs? Cron jobs are, we know from the Linux point of view, so they run at a certain point of time, right? So I can also have cron job. I can have a pod that runs this cron job. That means that every night I'll say take the backup of DB, or do some some cleanup in the cluster. So these are known as cron jobs. Okay, they run as pods. Even jobs run as pods. Now daemon sets. Okay, so this is one of the important questions. What is a daemon set? Okay, so daemon sets are also pods. Similar to deployment controller, they'll also maintain certain replicas. But here, let's say there are 3 nodes. Okay, what this let's say 3 nodes. For these 3 nodes, I need a monitoring agent. When I say agent, it has to run in all the nodes, right? Monitoring agent or logging agent. Okay, so here I won't define the number of replicas. Okay, there is no replicas concept. When you deploy something using daemon set as the controller, what the daemon set controller will do, it will make sure that there is one pod running in each node. Okay, if I run nginx as the daemon set using the daemon set controller, there will be one nginx pod per node. leaving the master node, you don't consider. Let's say I have added new node to the cluster. There is a worker node 3. Once you add a new node to the cluster, immediately daemon set what will do? It will run one more pod here, Nginx. So it won't run two instances in a single node. Okay, it will make sure that there is only one node, one pod running per node. So this is like monitoring. Okay, I wanted to monitor this particular node, so I can have the logging agent run as the daemon set. If I run as a deployment controller, so two instances might land in the same node, right? And the other instance might not even have at least one instance. Okay, that is not the use case, right? So there should be one, only one per node. So you deploy it with the daemon set. Okay, if you add one more node, fourth node, W4, so one more Nginx pod gets created here. So that's why there are no replicas, because there is one replica per node. Okay, now the last one is the static pods. So these are the pods that are not managed by the API server. That means that API server will not take your request to create these pods, nor it will take the request to delete these pods. Okay, these static pods are managed by the kubelets of each node. Okay, so every kubelet will have a default location. Let's say for worker node 1, okay, there is a default location. Okay, like etc slash kubernetes slash manifest. So this is a location. Okay, if you put a YAML file, pod manifest file here in a particular worker node, so the kubelet of that worker node will read that YAML file, pod manifest file, or any YAML file, and it will create the resource. Okay, let's say this YAML file is for pod creation. It will immediately create this pod in that particular node only. Okay, so now if you are trying to do kubectl delete pod and that pod name, it won't be deleted, because once request reaches the API server cannot process it, because it didn't create it in the first place. Okay, this pod over here, it is created by the kubelet because you put some YAML file at a dedicated location. Okay, where kubelet is monitoring. Okay, so but how do you delete this pod? You delete the YAML file. Okay, so why do you need it? If you want something to be managed by the kubelet, and if you don't want your API server to know that this particular pod is running, or to create this pod, so you can do this. Static pods are very rare use cases. Even in the real time scenarios, I have not used it. Okay, but it is there. Okay, you have to know it, because it might they might ask you in the interviews. So that's why I had to discuss it as well. Okay, yeah, so these are the complete Kubernetes objects. So we covered almost 98%. If we left out few more, okay, so we'll see in the classes. Okay, so we may not discuss everything in the class, because we will not have sufficient time, but I'll provide you my own recorded videos whenever I do them. Okay, but interview point of view, I'm going to teach you everything. Okay, understood, guys? Any doubt on the Kubernetes objects that we covered? If you think that we missed out something, or if you didn't understand something, we can discuss. We have 15 minutes time. Hello.
Vikram, what is this type node port that we discussed when we try to expose?
Yeah. Okay. So I thought of telling it in the services section. See, okay. So let's talk about the microservices architecture a bit. Okay. So inside the microservice architecture, there can be multiple pods, right? Okay. So let's take the case of one e-commerce website. So, okay. So they have a front end. Okay. So this is their front end application, like your any website. Okay. Let me. Okay, so this website, this is a front end to that application, maybe an Angular or some front end. So this front end, so there are multiple services, right? So there is a shipping microservice that takes care of shipping. There is a billing microservice. Okay, and then there is a wish list microservice, and then there is orders microservice, and then there are multiple databases for each, right? Billing, there is a database. For orders, there is a database. For wish list, there is a database, because everything has to stored. For shipping, there is a database. Okay, so now coming to the services. Okay, so this front end will talk to any of these, right? Okay, so that's why for everything there is a service. Okay, for this wish list there should be a service. For orders there should be a service, and for shipping there should be a service. Billing. Okay, so for billing to DB, this DB needs a service. Even this DB needs a service. This DB needs a service. Okay, when we talk about communication now. Okay, so front end, let's say the user logged in and immediately he went to the order section. So this front end has to talk to the orders pod. So these are all pods running, right? So we are not taking care of the number of instances. Okay, because service will manage it. Okay, so now this front end has to talk to the orders. So this orders, this communication will come to this service. Now, so orders might need some shipping information. So the pods inside the orders will come and talk to the shipping. Okay, similarly dashboard, sorry, billing, everything, right? So these are all communications which are happening inside the cluster. Okay, so I don't want to access the wish list directly from the browser, right? It is through the front end only I can see it. Similarly, billing, from front end only I can see it. So this front end calling other components, and the other components calling the internal components internally, right? So all these types of services known as cluster IP. That means that they give IP internal to the cluster, or these communications are within the cluster. Now the front end has to be exposed to the outside world, right? Correct. So front end has to be exposed to the outside world. Okay, let's say that this is the node. Okay, so these are node or node pool, you can say that group of nodes, anything, because for Kubernetes it is a complete system, it is one system. So now this front end, in order to be accessed, so there is a user, he wants to access the front end. Okay, for front end also I need to create a service, right? This is a service. But if I create this service as cluster IP, okay, there is no communication from outside to this service, but other services can talk to this internal service cluster IP. If I change this cluster IP from node port, immediately the traffic gets forwarded from outside. So this node port will assign a port number in 30,000 to 32767 range. Okay, for this service, let's say it is giving 32000. Okay, so now how will I access this front end now? I'll access this front end using IP address of any node inside the cluster. It can be your master, it can be your slave, and then followed by the port number. So now once a request comes on this port number, so immediately it gets forwarded to this IP service over here, and this service. Okay, if you talk about node port, it is nothing a combination of a cluster IP plus a port number on the host. Okay, that means that any request coming on this port number, it will be forwarded to the internal service, and then internal service will forward it to the port. We name it as a node port service, but it is a internal, it is a combination of a cluster IP plus some port number. We call it as a node port. If we change it to cluster IP back, so this communication is lost. That means that no one can access from outside. Now if you change it back to the node port, this port will not be the same again. This port might change. What Kubernetes will do is, within this range, right? So within this range, how many ports are there? There are 2767 port numbers are there. Okay, so let's say Okay, so initially it is node port and then you brought it to cluster IP. Okay, so then what happens is inside the cluster for some other service this port number might get assigned. You'll never know. So that's why you change the cluster IP back to the node port of the previous one. So if the 32,000 port is not available, so the Kubernetes will assign some other port in this range. Okay, so node ports are not always constant and you should not hard code any node port in your service. Okay, you should let the Kubernetes decide the output port for us. Okay, so now these ports are there, but who is going to use these ports? So in production, people are going to access your application on the port number? No, right? If what if I say Google is asking you to access their web application or the Google search using like this www.google.com colon 32222. Okay, so if Google asks us to use their application like this, so will you use it? Let's say after few days it is asking you to use like this port number. Will you use it? Will you remember
No.
the port number? Right, so that's why we have something known as load balancer IP address. So once you change any service to load balancer, what happens is in the cloud, so we have known as elastic load balancer, right? So it is, what is an elastic load balancer? So there is an load balancer over here, and then at the back end it can forward the traffic to any IP colon port combination. Let's say this, there is an IP, public IP. So any traffic coming onto this public IP, it can forward to IP plus port combination like this. So now this is load balancer. Now I'll have a public IP. So now I can have a DNS mapping to that public IP. So now www.google.com maps to this IP. So this IP will forward traffic to this IP and port combination, which is nothing but our node port, right? This service. So now users will only access your application using a stable DNS name, okay, without worrying about the port number. So that is load balancer service type. But getting a public IP from the cloud provider, it is chargeable. Okay, so for every public IP or the load balancer IP you demand, so yeah, cloud is going to provide, but they are going to charge you for that. So that's it for this video, guys. If you like our video, subscribe to our YouTube channel and also join our Facebook group. The links are given in the description below. You can also scan the QR code being shown on the video to directly point to the YouTube channel and Facebook group. Thanks for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one.